The past is about to merge with the present. When you think of Pete Carroll, what likely comes to mind? His trademark high energy, his constant gum chewing, or those animated sidelines? And what if that energy is the spark the Las Vegas Raiders need in 2025? So, here is the question. What happens every time Pete Carroll takes over a team? If you like Anana be the second day better, Wednesday property in this episode. What not even mattered every time one team says his being tree the national for, team doing the anytime present before you need to manage in the reservation. This, we need to turn back time. Carroll's initial run as head coach wasn't exactly glorious. In 1994 with the New York Jets, he had a promising 2-0 start and held a 6-5 record halfway through the season. Then, everything unraveled. 5 consecutive losses. The season was over. Carroll was let go. But that wasn't the conclusion. It was only the beginning. Fast forward 3 years, and Carroll found himself in New England. His first season, 10 victories and a playoff appearance. Not bad for a coach many had already labeled a one and done. Quietly and patiently, he was laying the groundwork. Now leap forward to present-day Las Vegas. The Raiders are making a big bet on Carroll's experience. And if history is any guide, when Carroll gets another opportunity, he makes it count. He has a reputation for revamping locker rooms, shifting cultures, and extracting the best from young rosters. Just look at Seattle. The real question now is, can he replicate that success? Can Pete Carroll mold this struggling Raiders team into a formidable opponent by midseason? Las Vegas doesn't need a miracle. They need momentum. They need belief. And let's face it, no franchise is more acquainted with chaos than the Raiders. Here's where things get even more compelling. Carroll wasn't always the legendary football mind we associate with the Seahawks. After the Jets let him go, he didn't disappear. Instead, he refined his skills as the defensive coordinator for the 49ers. Then came the hiring frenzy of 1997. Carroll was interviewed by the Lions, the Rams, and eventually the Patriots. That's when things got tricky. Carroll replaced Bill Parcells, a legendary figure and someone the veteran Patriots deeply respected. Imagine walking into a locker room where half the players still wish your predecessor was in charge. That's the reality Carroll faced. Yet somehow, he kicked things off on a high note. The Patriots won their first 4 games and outscored opponents 130-40. But then the Week 5 bye derailed their momentum. They faltered, losing 4 of the next 5. Sound familiar? Because it is. Carroll's teams often burst out of the gate, but that initial momentum can be fragile. Still, Carroll didn't quit. He rallied the squad, winning 5 of their final 7 games and clinching the AFC East. That team boasted a top 10 offense and defense, anchored by a young Drew Bledsoe and the dynamic Curtis Martin. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Pete Carroll's roller coaster coaching career and what it could mean for the Raiders, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and ring the bell icon so you never miss a breakdown like this. Now, back to the story. Carroll was dismissed 2 years later in 1999 and disappeared from the NFL sidelines for over a decade. Then, in 2010, the Seahawks, coming off a dreadful 5-11 season, gave Carroll complete control. He didn't waste time. He brought in John Schneider as GM and retained defensive minds Gus Bradley and Dan Quinn, key figures in creating the legendary Legion of Boom. That first draft? A thing of beauty. Russell Okung, Earl Thomas, Golden Tate, and Cam Chancellor. Carroll wasn't just assembling a team. He was constructing the blueprint for a dynasty. So now the question arises, can he pull off the same magic in Las Vegas? Here's where Carroll's genius truly shined. In his first year with Seattle, he made over 200 roster transactions. That wasn't just a rebuild. It was a full-on reset. But one move stood above the rest, trading for Marshawn Lynch. It wasn't just a roster change. It was a shift in team identity. The Seahawks improved by only 2 wins that year, finishing 7-9. But surprisingly, that was enough to win the NFC West. Yes, you heard that right. They made the playoffs with a losing record. That granted them a home playoff game against Drew Brees and the defending champion Saints. Everyone wrote them off. Then, beast mode happened. Seattle stunned the league with a 41-36 victory. They fell to the Bears in the next round, but Carroll had made a statement. Something real was taking shape. Now, let's link it back to the Raiders. Carroll's teams don't always start dominant, but when they find their rhythm, they're dangerous. So how does that align with Las Vegas? Let's examine the Raiders' opening stretch in 2025. Their first 5 games are against the Patriots, Chargers, Commanders, Bears, and Colts. Not exactly the toughest slate. That can only mean one thing. If history is any guide, Carroll's teams often come out hot, just like in 1994 with the Jets and 1997 with the Patriots. He may struggle midseason, but his fingerprints are always on those early wins. The question is, can the Raiders take advantage of that soft early schedule, rack up some wins, and generate the belief this team so desperately needs? With Carroll leading the charge, it's not just possible, it's the expectation. Looking back at Pete Carroll's career, one thing is obvious. He learns from every experience. Whether it's coaching Drew Bledsoe in New England or rebuilding from the ground up in Seattle, Carroll's ability to handle adversity has only improved. That's what separates seasoned coaches from the pack: repetition, pressure, and growth. Face the fire enough times, and you stop flinching. So here's the big question. What would success in year 1 under Pete Carroll look like for Las Vegas? I've made my prediction already, and I'm sticking to it. I see the Raiders finishing 9-8 this season. Let's break that down. 3-3 in the AFC West, 3-1 against the AFC South, 1-3 versus the NFC East. Other games? Wins over the Bears, Browns, and Patriots. That adds up to 9 victories. Does that guarantee a playoff spot? Not necessarily. Last year, teams needed at least 10 wins to make it into the AFC postseason picture. The Broncos, for instance, squeaked in with 10. So 9 wins might leave the Raiders just short, unless the playoff race turns into a chaotic free-for-all. But here's the twist. I believe the Raiders can come out firing. The early schedule offers very winnable games, and if they can steal one, they're not expected to win, say against the Eagles or the Commanders. That changes everything. Imagine sweeping the Chargers. That alone could rewrite the story of the AFC West. I'm trying to be realistic. A 4-2 divisional record would be amazing, but 2-4 is more probable. Still, if Carroll can push this squad to 9 gritty wins in his debut season, that's a major victory. And from what I'm hearing, Raider Nation is on board. Let's be real. Division games are entirely different animals. It doesn't matter who's favored. AFC West matchups are always intense. You could argue the AFC West is one of the deepest divisions in the league. But within those rivalries, talent disparities shrink, emotions spike, and chaos takes over. Just look at last season against the Chiefs. The Raiders lost by just 7 in one matchup and 2 in the other. That's the reigning Super Bowl champs, and the Raiders were right there. Then you've got Denver. In one contest, the Raiders jumped to a 17-3 lead, but a brutal pick-6 flipped everything, right after Brock Bowers was left wide open in the end zone. In the rematch, it was another single-possession game deep into the fourth quarter, even after the starting quarterback went down. These games are tight. So yes, a 3-3 division mark is very much within reach. But that's only part of the test. Once you survive the divisional battles, the bigger challenge remains. Can this team beat the teams it's supposed to? Can they sneak a win or two they're not expected to get? Winning 9 games sounds great, until you realize 6 of your losses were blowouts. That's not real progress. Competitive losses matter. Staying close matters. Under Josh McDaniels, the Raiders went 6-11, but 9 of those losses were by 1 score or less. They just couldn't finish. Carroll's track record tells a different tale. His teams usually come out swinging, and in the one year he didn't, he still won a playoff game and nearly knocked off the Bears the following week. That wasn't a fluke. That was classic Carroll football.
And now it's Raiders football. Now let's talk about the last stat that could define the Raiders' 2025 campaign. And it involves one surprising factor: the dome.
The Raiders finally have their guy under center, Geno Smith. The real question is, can he deliver? If recent analytics are any clue, the answer might be a resounding yes, especially inside Allegiant Stadium.
Simply put, Geno Smith becomes a different quarterback when he doesn't have to deal with wind, rain, or freezing temps. Now, he'll play his home games in a climate-controlled stadium in Las Vegas. Sure, the sample size isn't huge. Over the past 3 years, Geno has started 10 games in domes and 39 outdoors.
But the numbers are convincing enough to generate real optimism. Combine that with Pete Carroll's return, and suddenly this isn't just a good fit, it's a tailor-made system to elevate Geno to his best form. And here's something you might not know. Geno is about to play 12 indoor games this season. Think about that. Over the last 3 years, he played just 10 dome games, all on the road. Even so, he put up 20 touchdowns and only 3 picks. That's not a fluke, that's a pattern. So yeah, I am quite hopeful. And let me know in the comments section if you think the same.